So, about 10-20 minutes ago, I just finished watching the season finale of The Bad Batch. And let me just say that I have never seen a more disappointing ending in quite a bit of time. Probably since the beginning of 2020 was the last time I saw something pretty disappointing. The big problem with the show, before I get into the details, the big problem is there's no big overarching setup. There really isn't. You have Crosshair, but he's not even present for like most of the show. And the entire show is just the Bad Batch on literal fetch quests. It's literally miscellaneous quests in Skyrim, but on the big screens. And it could not be any more pointless and disappointing. I think the show suffered from three big problems. Number one being that there was no clear plot point. They just constantly had missions of just going on, missions for Sid, and there was no overarching plot like there was for Rebels, for example, or just anything else. Number two would be how there is unequal character time. I'm going to be completely honest, and this is just a personal opinion. I don't really care for many of the members of the Bad Batch except for Echo. Echo is someone that I have seen since my childhood, and the fact that it looks like that he is like, a primary character or, a very core character in episode 1, and then he just like really only says a few things and says like a funny joke here and there is quite disappointing. And 3, Omega being completely good and perfect. Star Wars has a thing with Mary Sue and Rey, from the sequels. I don't think Omega is that bad. I'm not trying to say that she's like this horrible character. I do, sympathize with her as a character, and I think she has a lot more emotional stuff. But I think what the problem is with Dave Filoni and the writing team is they tried to make her just so good at heart, especially at the end, and it's just, especially at the end, there's something that happens. I won't spoil it, but it kind of just slaps you in the face because then it ends up going away. There's no real sacrifice in this show. And it's a first season, so I'm not expecting, half the squad to fucking die. I'm really not. But even like minor characters that don't matter don't like go away or die. So it takes away just a lot of everything. It takes away sacrifice, it takes away any emotional value that any character's sacrifice would have had, and so on and so forth. I think that The Bad Batch had two really good beginning episodes setting up the plot and stuff like that. And then whenever they meet Sid, that's whenever everything starts to get a lot more boring. Episodes 3, 4, 5, and 6, in my opinion, are very dull and boring. And after episode 2, the Bad Batch show doesn't really rack up until episode 8. And that's episode 8. And the big problem with that is the introduction of Cad Bane. We see Cad Bane introduced in episode 8, and then he looks like an absolute bitch in episode 9. He gets kicked around, he loses Omega very, very easily, and it's just very. The show has this build up that ends up going away in the next episode or even sooner. So a lot of the big plot points are just gone. Episodes 11 and 12 are also pretty good in my opinion. I think that might be controversial because I know that some people disliked those episodes because it didn't really feature the Bad Batch and it featured Hera Syndulla from Rebels more. I personally liked them. I thought that they were pretty good and set up some nice plot points. But the problem with those episodes is they're not going to matter until sometime in season 2. They have absolutely no build up to the season finale. And I think that's also another problem with the Bad Batch. Anything that's added is just kind of cast aside for a later time, which means that whenever we get to the season finale, there's almost nothing. There's almost no build up or anything. And then after that, there's one episode, season episode 13, very boring. But then we actually get into episode 14 and, then the season finale, the two-parter. Episode 14 was really good and introduced a character, Gregor, which was, very fantastic. We don't really get to see him for much. He's also another character that's kind of cast aside until maybe the later seasons. But even then, that's also a tricky thing. Will he actually be in the later seasons, or will he just be cast aside for Rebels? We don't know. I hope so. I hope, Dave Filoni and the writing team aren't going to be stupid and just not include these characters. But with how just flat-faced the season finale was, I don't know. If you haven't seen the last two episodes of The Bad Batch, I would strongly urge that you watch them now, because now I'm going to be going into spoiling the last two episodes of The Bad Batch. So, the last two episodes, the first part of the season finale was kind of exciting, if a bit confusing on what the hell's going on with Crosshair. It was very unclear until you actually... It was kind of unclear. His motives were kind of contradictory, at least whenever I watched. But I think that was fine. But then they had the destruction of Kamino, which means that there was a lot of plot points that could have been possible that were then removed. Yes, the destruction of Kamino was very emotional, and it showed different, rooms and stuff like that, kind of reminiscing before they went to fucking Kingdom Come. But the biggest problem is there's a huge plot thing in Star Wars Battlefront, the old games, a long, long time ago, that featured a Kaminoan clone civil war. I think for the Bad Batch, that would have been perfect. I still think that is completely possible, but it's not going to be on Kamino anymore because Kamino is completely destroyed, and I don't see if it's possible that will even happen in the first place. I doubt there is going to be a Kaminoan civil war anymore, just because I'm just very uncertain as to what the writing team is even thinking or doing. And with how season 1 has been, with it being very boring and making me actually constantly look at my phone to check the time and checking how long the episodes are running for, it's just very boring. I don't really have any faith in what season 2 is going to be because of this. And then at the end of episode 2, or the second part of the season finale, it's just them escaping Kamino after it explodes, and it's very boring. Nothing happens. There's no plot twists. There's no high things, except for, at the end, whenever AZ, the robot that accompanied Fives, whenever AZ makes a heroic sacrifice. But then Omega does a very stupid thing and gets out of her pod. I don't know why the writing team does this. They just try and make Omega look this super uber good person. I don't want that. I want a character with flaws, and you don't get that with Omega, and we're never going to get that with Omega, which is quite frustrating in my opinion. I'm assuming Omega will be used a lot more in, future projects with Star Wars, and I'm not really going to care much about her if she's going to be, portrayed as this Mary Sue. I liked her in the Between episode. She had a rocky start in episode 1, but I actually was starting to like her. But now, with these last few episodes, my like for her has started to wane a little. And the problem is, AZ was about to make a heroic sacrifice. He said a very emotional one-liner, and then Omega was about to get him, and then Crosshair uses his sniper rifle to pick them up. So that whole emotional scene with AZ, gone, means nothing. That's what I hate about these character sacrifices, and then they do a yank on you. They do a yoink. They say, oh, we get to have you have this emotional thing, but we don't at the same time by saving the character. It means nothing. It plays with the strings of the fans, and I heavily despise it completely. I care much more about Echo, and I care much more about Wrecker and Tech. Not really Tech. I always found Tech to be kind of boring, just the way he was written and such. And the fact that the show really doesn't give Tech anything aside from, oh, let me say a long, technical thing. And that's about it. All in all, this is more of a rant talking about it, and me making this literally, 20 minutes afterwards, me trying to make this as quickly as possible. So tell me your thoughts in the comments below. I don't know if I'll continue making Star Wars related content. Maybe if the video does well, I'm not sure. I will be going back to YouTube at some point, but I've been having a lot of family over. I've been doing a lot of things with theater, and on top of that, I have the ever looming college next semester coming up, and I'm gonna have to deal with that too. So I'm gonna be ending up real busy. So I don't know if I'll have much time for YouTube, but I will do my best to do more in the future. So, anyways, if you like the video, like the video. Subscribe if you're willing to. It's free, or don't. I don't really care. And I will see you when I'll see you. Adios.